Are loot boxes bad? What is up there, workforce? My name is Chris with Work To Game. You guys have seen a lot of content from Brian lately, and I feel like in my last couple videos, I just need to say hello to you guys again, because I have been super busy since basically November. And so for the month of January going into February, I was traveling like 10 out of every 14 days. And in between, we've had a sick dog, and he's a new puppy, and so I've been at the vet twice a week, and I just haven't had a chance to play a lot of games, and therefore haven't had a chance to talk to you guys a lot. So I wanted to talk a little bit about loot boxes. I've watched a lot of Brian's videos on Apex and the new Titanfall Battle Royale game, and I've watched his videos on Anthem, and I really wonder if loot boxes are bad. And so I wanted to kind of talk about like why loot boxes might be bad and why I think maybe we should lay off. So on one hand, loot boxes are gambling. You are spending a resource on something for an unpredictable result. And the way that works within the brain, if you get close to that result, it sends a similar set of boosters to your brain that says, hey, that was awesome. And it makes you want to do it again and again. And the fact that that's going to be sold for real money alongside in-game currency says that they are planning on receiving some amount of real money from that, whether or not you are one of the ones that gives it, right? So the core business model here says, if I have 1,000 people, X number will spend real money. So even if you're one of the ones that doesn't, you're still, the statistic still holds true. So having 2,000 people is still better than 1,000 people. So growing the game is good. And the game being bigger draws in even more players. Nobody wants to be the only guy playing a game, so you even just being in the game and making the the lobbies fill and stuff like that already is good for the game, and then the handful in there that want to spend a lot of money will. So that is the theory behind loot boxes. Now, what are the alternatives? The alternatives is you can charge a flat fee for a game. $60 has been the fee forever, but it doesn't matter. The number could change. In 2025, it could move to $100, and it could be a flat $100 forever and ever. They're going to charge a flat amount for the game. They're going to support that game with as little expense as possible, because all of their money is going to be made in one big wave, and then any amount of remaining sales. And then as soon as it doesn't make sense to support the game anymore, they're going to cut that support off. A good example of this is something like God of War. It drops, it's game of the year, it sells a bajillion copies, and then it's done forever. And so so they worked on it all this time, they made all their money in this amount of time, and then they're done, and they're out. Octopath Traveler, no DLC. Boom, it's done. Now, if you want the game to continue on, especially in the case of an MMO like Anthem, one of the things you can do is you can move to a subscription model. Look at Final Fantasy Online, EVE Online, WoW. Back in the day, you had things like EverQuest, so on. There's a bunch of things out there, and that is games as a service. And you're saying, I'm going to opt into this service like Netflix, and I'm going to receive new content at set intervals that is meant to occupy me, and I'm going to continue building on this account, and I will continue paying you. And many of those times, they then also say, every once in a while, I'm going to put a whole bunch in at once, and you're going to pay a little extra for that in the form of an expansion. But it is possible that we're starting to see that sort of mentality go away, and I wouldn't be shocked to see a WoW or a Final Fantasy remove the expansion cost sometime within the next couple expansions. That wouldn't shock me, as you start to see things like WoW giving away huge amounts of World of Warcraft free with a subscription. So basically all but the current expansion. I could see them eventually just saying, just play our game. So I think EVE Online is like that already. I want to say that EVE Online doesn't charge you an upfront cost. You just pay to play. So you just pay for the time you use. Now, the last model is this free to play. Free to play is a game that blends the two. So it says, I want the game to carry on like a subscription model, but I really just want to release one big amount of content up there, and then anything additional I want to just trickle through. So I'm not going to charge the upfront cost, but the vast majority of my content is going to be there. Think Fortnite. The vast majority of the game came out on launch. Even though they're not technically launched. The vast majority of an Apex or anything like that comes out on launch. And then everything after that, they'll update cosmetics, they'll update a map here and there, but the core game mechanics don't change. And so a free-to-play game gets minimal development after this. There are some exceptions when you start to talk about things like Warframe, and the way they support those is through an optional system to opt into. So you don't have to pay the $60, you don't have to pay the subscription, but in trade for that, instead of all of us paying $5 or $15 or whatever, a few people are going to pay on our behalf. So if a free-to-play game costs, let's say, half as much as a subscription-based game to generate, and we're all paying, let's say, $10 a month for easy math, then they need to make, on average, $5 a month to have the same profit. So if you're not spending money, somebody else needs to. So from a development standpoint, where they get themselves in trouble is, how do you make sure that those people feel valuable, since they're really the ones you want? Everybody else needs to be there to fill lobbies and have fun and hype the game up, but really your core audience are the people that are paying. So if every other player is playing a free-to-play game for free, the in-between ones are paying double, right? Because the math needs to still average out. So, and actually, if you see any of the statistics that companies do release on a lot of these like phone app games, it actually is a lot more skewed than that. You have like 10% of the population giving 90% of the money. So what do you give those people? They want to keep giving. These people who have spent thousands of dollars on phone apps, and they're definitely out there. And so how do you give these whales something? Well, we've definitely seen a couple of attempts at this. So the first is we've seen games, EA's gotten in trouble for this, where they've made the game better for those players. And you have games like Kingdom of Loathing that don't apologize for this, and it just is what it is. And they don't pretend to have balance, and take it or leave it. And then you have games more like a Warframe or like a Halo, where it's either cosmetic or it's totally worthless. So Halo gave you items towards a game mode that was totally optional, and it wasn't the primary game mode. So if you wanted to go play in this game mode, those items helped out. You earned a little bit of them on your own, but if you wanted to spend money, you could have a lot more of them. But the core game modes that we know and love Halo for, you couldn't use those items in, so it was effectively just cosmetics. And so you fall in one of those two camps. Now, this was a very long, well-rounded way of saying that is why we have loot boxes. And I know Brian gets really sensitive on loot boxes because he has kids, and I don't. And so when you talk about, is a game safe for kids and things like that, gambling being in your life is a big deal. Well, I know that my wife can go gambling, and I can go gambling, and we're not going to lose our house, and it's not going to set up bad connections in our brain, because we're already fully developed adults. We're both over the age of 25. Our brains are, at that point of development where we can kind of decide if we want to let gambling be a big place in our life. And we both are lucky enough to not be somebody that's affected by either an addictive personality or something where we have a weakness to gambling specifically. So I don't worry about the gambling aspect. So I get that I'd like to warn people about it. Yes, I understand that's why it's on the ratings, but it doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is the game fun, and how does the game get paid for? So when you see people out there saying, this game should be free to play, but it's not a subscription, you end up back in that middle spot. There has to be loot boxes. And it doesn't have to be loot boxes, but there has to be a monetization method. These companies still have to make money. I know we all want just beautiful, wonderful, supported games that are just everything we dream of for free, but that's not how the world works. These games are made by real people who have real lives and real bills and real desires to retire one day and send kids to college and take vacations. And that costs money, so they need to make that money from us. Meanwhile, the games cost money. They cost servers to run, they cost hardware on all the computers they're developed on, they cost technicians to keep them up when they go down. Those are costs. So the game has to make a lot of money. Gaming makes a lot of money. Gaming as an industry now at this point makes more money. Esports alone makes more money in a year than the Super Bowl does. Now, I know that's only one game, but that is the largest grossing event in the largest grossing sports franchise. So that does put gaming on the map. And gaming makes a lot, but it costs a lot. And we're never going to remove ourselves from that. So if you don't want loot boxes, you have to decide, would I rather be in a subscription, or would I rather pay one upfront cost and know that the game will die? I tend to opt into the subscription model because it's pay for what you get. I don't have to guarantee I get 60 hours. I need to get 15 hours of joy every month. And that's averaged. So if I don't play much this month, which I haven't, are there months that I'll play 30 hours? Absolutely. So I will make it back up. So that is the subscription model. So that is the direction I tend to lean. But do I think loot boxes are bad? No, not at all. I think I don't have any interest in playing a game where the only way to be the top player is to give them an arbitrary amount of money to have a chance at loot. I would rather them just charge me the $60 and hand me all the base guns. If you want to have like a mode where like a Destiny 2 mode where some people have way better guns than others, I would make that a secondary mode, and I would put the ranked matches in more of a Halo style where everybody's dealt the same weaponry, so that your core demographic feels that they don't have to pay, and then give those people cosmetics. And then I would put the really good guns either in a separate mode or free to everybody. I wouldn't put them behind an effective paywall, especially if that paywall is tied to a game of chance. If you want to sell all the best guns at $1 a piece, then I can decide, okay, I play with assault rifles, and I play with I play with like full auto assault rifles and semi-auto assault rifles. So I need to buy one of each. So I'm out $2. I can make that decision. But when I have to start paying, $5 for a loot box that's going to have 10 items in it, and then none of those are assault rifles, that's really frustrating to me because I didn't want any of that stuff, and I don't want to keep paying. So when it comes to paying games and are loot boxes bad and why are people outraged here and not here, I think a lot of it has to do with implementation. If there are games where it's not just cosmetic, there's a lot more to be frustrated about because we feel like we were told the game was free and now it suddenly doesn't feel free. We also get frustrated when there's loot boxes in a game that was paid, even though that really just means this game was in the group of it's not going to be supported forever, and they're trying to move it to that side where it is supported forever. So I don't think paying $60 entitles us to not seeing a continued revenue service, especially if they think selling it for $60 isn't its value. If they think it should have been $100 on the shelf, but that people won't buy it for $100, they can put it at $60 and they can try to make up the remaining $40 off of loot boxes. And that allows them to put more money into the development of a game. Not all games cost the same amount to make. And so, do I think loot boxes are bad? No. Do I think that playing a game that has loot boxes sends a message that they're okay? Yeah. Yeah, if you play a game that has loot boxes in it, you are consenting that that is okay. So if you want to send a message that you don't like loot boxes, don't play any game with loot boxes. None. No Halo. No, the vast majority of EA and Activision games at this point, don't play them. But I think you're going to be alone. I think that that's the direction the industry's headed. And I think that it's better to have a healthy relationship with saying, gaming costs haven't really gone up other than like selling collector's editions and stuff. The minimum cost to get into gaming hasn't really gone up. Console costs have not skyrocketed at the rate that the hardware has. I think gaming is an incredibly affordable hobby in 2019. I think that you get a lot for your money. The fact that I consider $1 per hour is kind of my bar, and every game seems to meet it. Think about the cost of a movie per hour. Think about the cost of going to a show per hour. Think about the cost of pretty much anything but board games. And even board games, you have to play them multiple times because board games aren't cheap. The initial cost of a board game is shockingly expensive sometimes. So I don't think they're bad. I don't think it's worth getting upset over. And I don't think that if one game has loot boxes that it makes it the same as every other. I think you have to look at how it was implemented, what the intent behind it is, and what do I get for it. If they're putting cosmetics in, and that's because they're going to continue to add maps and they're going to continue to add things like that are free to everybody, then that's where that money comes from. Halo 5 got an incredible amount of support post-launch. We played it for at least a year after launch, and it's still going, and they kept adding things. Where did that come from? That came from the fact that the game's still making money, and not just off initial sales. And so I am all for whatever method gaming companies want to do to make money, as long as they're being transparent about that they're spending some portion of that money on us. They want to keep 40% for themselves or whatever, that's fine. That they're going to come back and either keep the game incredibly well supported on a technical level or add content or both. And that it's clear what I'm getting for that money. And that if I don't pay that money, I understand what experience I'm getting. So if you want to have a game where loot boxes are the only way to win, just tell me. And I can choose whether or not that's a game for me or not. Don't sit here and hide because you're afraid of my answer. So I am all for any number of loot boxes they want to have, as long as they are very clear up front what's going to be in them. You know, are they going to be game-changing items or just cosmetic? Are they going to cost a certain amount of real money? Are they going to be obtainable in-game? If so, roughly how long do you think that takes the average player to get? These is all things I need to know before I decide if that is a good loot box system or a bad loot box system. I think there are good casinos and bad casinos, and there are all sorts of, and so I don't think you can paint it all with one brush. So that's just kind of my thoughts. I know that's not like a super extreme, oh no, we should never do loot boxes, or oh, loot boxes are amazing. It really is just a lot more like, it makes sense to me why businesses do it. And if I had to be responsible for paying the salaries of thousands of employees that just want to make games, I think that the guy who brings loot boxes into the meeting is at least worth hearing out. So I guess let me know in the comments below what you guys think. I've seen a lot of comments on Brian's video. Some of you seem to love loot boxes. Some of you seem to be very anti-loot box. And I would just love to know, if you don't like loot boxes, which other method would you prefer of them making revenue? And if you do like loot boxes, do you think that the industry should move to that full time, and we should see the subscription model and the charge up front model sort of go away more often than not? So that's it. My name's Chris with Work To Game. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. I hope you guys have a fantastic day. We'll see you next time.
Oh, hello. Were you expecting somebody? Chuck-like? Well, I'll never tell where he is. Only that if you want to see your friend again, you should totally hit subscribe. And maybe even a thumbs up. Thumbs down don't make me happy. And when I'm not happy, something happens to Chuck. I'm not joking. Goodbye. Subscribe. I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. See you next time.